Good evening and welcome to this, welcome to this Tuesday, September 15th, 2020 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me remind commissioners, please make sure your microphone is lighted green and speak into the microphone for the record. And we'll call roll. Commissioner Wiggins.
Present.
Commissioner Bowie. We'll let him get to the mic. And Commissioner Bowie.
Present.
Commissioner Ackland.
Present.
Commissioner Fizer.
Present.
Commissioner Peterman.
Present.
Commissioner Urquia.
Present.
Commissioner Mansur. And Mayor Turnbow.
Present.
And Commissioner Faulkner is present. We do have a quorum. There are no personal appearances scheduled this evening. One item on our consent agenda, approval of minutes from our September 1st, 2020 meeting. And unless any of the commissioners have questions or comments about the minutes, I would entertain a motion either to approve consent agenda or accept minutes of our September 1st, 2020 meeting.
I'll move to accept the minutes from the September 1st, 2020 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Wiggins to accept minutes of our September 1st, 2020 meeting. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 8. And we have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. There is nothing this evening under unfinished business, so that takes us to new business. Our first case is case number 20010, Parkside rezoning from agricultural to R1P. This case does require a public hearing, and at this time I will open the public hearing on case 20010, and if the applicant is present, would you like to come forward and present your case to us? And if you would, again, make sure that that microphone is lighted green. No, push button.
There, light lit up.
Yep.
So I guess I'm live now.
We would have figured out in a minute, but thank you for that.
No problem. My name is Joe Duffy, and this is a project that I am proposing that we do in Raymore, and it's a project I've been working with the seller on for quite a period of time. Also, I read the staff report, and as you can tell by the dates in the staff report, we've had a lot of meetings and a lot of things. So your staff has been very good to work with. I came in proposing some multifamily, some that sort of thing, and I was highly discouraged by your staff saying that would be more difficult. So we kept going back to the drawing boards, and we've now stand before you with this one, and it will be all a single family neighborhood. So we're here tonight to ask you to rezone this so we can start working on the preliminary plats and that sort of thing to work and get it approved. So we've already shown them to the city staff and that sort of thing. So, and working through things with Katie and Jim Cataract. So, but I'm here. I also have my engineers here, and if you have any questions, because technical questions I'm not real good at, but we envision this area being very much the flavor that's already there. We have Creekmore on the north. We see these houses being in the 350 and up price bracket, and by the time we get to building them, that may be too, because the prices of single-family product is just going crazy. It's lumber's up, concrete's up, everything's up. So, but I'm here to answer any questions that any members of the commission might have. So,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Duffy.
You
I
bet.
think we'll hear the staff report, and then undoubtedly, if we have questions, we'll bring you back. Thank you. All right. Ms. Jardot, do you have the staff report on case 20010?
I will give it a staff
Mr.
report this evening,
Or
sir.
Mr. Carteret?
Thank you, sir. As Mr. Duffy indicated, tonight we have a request to reclassify zoning of, it's approximately 155 acres from the current agricultural zoning district to the R1P, which is a single-family planned residential district. The 155 acres is generally to the west of North Madison Street, and most of the land being south of what will be the extension of 163rd Street. Actually, this property lies north of Hawk Ridge Park and north of Madison Creek subdivision, as well as there's an agricultural 10-acre property, which is kind of cut out of this overall acreage, if you would, at the southeast corner. And then to the north, we have the Creekmore Planned Unit Development property, as well as a couple of 10, 15-acre parcels that are zoned agricultural to the north along Madison Street. The future land use plan map of our current growth management plan does designate this property as appropriate for low-density residential. Our thoroughfare plan, street plan for the city, designates 163rd Street and North Madison Street both as major collector roadways, and then Sunset Lane as a minor collector. You may recall Sunset Lane has always been planned to go from 58 Highway along the section line up to what would be 163rd Street. So Sunset Lane will bisect this property almost in half. But that, as you recall, with the recent voter approval, that is a general obligation bond project that will be moving forward in the near future. This rezoning request requires a public hearing, which was advertised for this evening. Enter into the record the notices that were mailed to all of our adjoining property owners, the notice of publication in the Journal newspaper, our Unified Development Code, applications submitted by Mr. Duffy, our growth management plan, and then the staff report submitted to the commission this evening. The rezoning request does require a good neighbor meeting. We held one back on July 8th. We had 17 residents attend that meeting with a lot of questions. Those were highlighted in your staff report with the question and the general response that was given either by the applicant or the city. The property's had its agricultural zoning classification since it was annexed. I believe it was back in 1978. The growth management plan designation of low-density residential has been in place since 1995. Mr. Duffy touched on a little bit of the history. I do want to briefly go through that. I think it's important for the commission and the public to understand how we got to the R1P request that is here this evening. We started with the applicant back in May of 2018. He first came in with an interest in developing the property. He talked about a mixture of uses. He would have some single family, he would have some two family, he would have some multiple family, somewhat mixed together on the property. Typically, when you have those land use mixtures in one development, a zoning classification like a planned unit development is what makes sense. When Creekmore first came in and proposed their development, they went with planned unit development because they had single family, they had two family proposed, they had multiple family proposed. They have since eliminated multiple family. They still have some land area that could be two-family. But that's why we went plan unit development for this request, again, to allow that mixture of uses. Following up, in October of 2018, he came forward with a conceptual plan, again showing the mixture of uses, had just under 500 units overall spread out over the property. In May of 2019, came in with another version of the plan, had reduced total number of units to 400. Then in February of 2020, we had a little bit of a lull in discussions, but he came back with a new plan. It was single family only at that time, and then moved forward in June with the actual rezoning application. Still stuck with the PUD zoning, but it was single family at that time. There was certainly no harm in having a PUD of only single family dwelling units. What we were doing at that time, when you have a PUD, you're required to do what's called a preliminary plan. So you have to show layout of the streets, layout of the lots. We prepare a memorandum of understanding, and you start getting into some of the technical studies that are required to, in essence, get a preliminary plat approved for the development. We move forward with Park Board review of that overall plan in June. And again, in July, we had the Good Neighbor meeting where the PUD zoning and that preliminary plan were presented to the neighbors. In July 22nd, the applicant at that point requested to place a hold on review of the PUD application. The principal reason for that, again, as I mentioned, the preliminary plan, there is a lot of studies of work that has to go in and be submitted for staff review to get it to the commission. One of the principal items that we were waiting on was a jurisdictional determination from the Army Corps of Engineers. They were in the process of getting that, but didn't have it yet. And we would not, from staff standpoint, allow that PUD application to move forward without having that document, because it triggers other city code requirements depending upon what it says. That was going to be too lengthy of a delay for the applicant. He wanted to move forward with at least securing zoning approval. And the only way to do that would be to separate it out, no longer ask for the PUD. If you come in and ask for just single family zoning, you don't have to do the preliminary plat with that zoning request. What happens is the preliminary plat, if he is successful in getting the R1 zoning, he would follow up with a new application for a preliminary plat, goes back through the Good Neighbor process, goes back through the public hearing process, et cetera. And all those studies would be done at that point in time. So the request for the R1P was simply try to separate the zoning from the actual plat that was going to be submitted for review. The plan district that's being asked for is, it allows for a unified development to occur, but with some ability of some modifications. So several years ago, we established the planned district, and there's basically a menu of amenities that have to be provided when you ask for that. The planned district, in essence, why they ask for that, they're looking for a reduction maybe in a setback, maybe in a building coverage area. Those are identified, and I'll get to those in a moment. But he asked for the planned overlay district to allow a little bit of flexibility in its design, but again, it's providing amenities in lieu of the specific requirements. Again, the R1P was modified in August, and that's what was then notified to the neighbors of the request for this evening's public hearing. One item for everyone to remember tonight, again, we're dealing just with the zoning. We had shared that preliminary plan with the PUD with the neighbors, but that is no longer on the table. It's not what's being proposed this evening or being discussed this evening. So want the commission to focus on what is the most appropriate land use for the property, all the details on, how many lots are we going to have, what would the lot sizes be. Lot sizes we'll discuss in a moment, but what the home sizes would be, home values, access points, parkland, all of those items are tied in with the preliminary plan. Again, that would be coming as a next step. I mentioned the planned overlay district. The modifications that the applicant is looking to make, the deviations from the R1 standards, I've outlined in the staff report. That would be to lot size, lot width, the setbacks, and then the building coverage area. The principal reason for these reductions is what he came in talking about the development. He does propose an area of the subdivision that would have smaller lot sizes than what the standard R1 would be. R1 standard is 8,400 square foot lots with 70-foot lot widths. Majority of the lots on that preliminary plan that he initially shared met that requirement. He has one small phase of the development that actually is targeted for more narrow lot single-family homes, very similar to what the Planning Commission approved with Eastbrook at Creekmore, which is directly to the north of this subdivision, which is currently under construction. That is a small lot phase of the Creekmore subdivision. Those lots are, I believe, the 6,000 square foot, as well as a 40-foot lot width. So he was thinking about a phase of that being in his overall development, which is why the R1P has those minimum standards proposed. Just one note, not directly applicable to the zoning request, but we had shared the proposal, of course, with our school district. Always a question. How will, we change zoning to residential, we have an influx of new single-family developments, how does it impact the school district? They've known for a long time about the proposed development on the property. They've incorporated that into their recent long-range planning studies that they've been working on. They indicated that they were, quote, aware of the development, do not have any concerns with the proposed R1 single-family development occurring. Our engineering division submitted its memorandum of the provision of adequate facilities for the property. I want to note again, the property's been planned for low-density residential for over 25 years. The request, this is a textbook application of infill development where we have Creekmore single-family development to the north and to the west. We have rural estate, large lot development, residential, single-family to the east. We have Madison Creek and a future phase of Madison Creek to the south. We have a couple of large agricultural properties adjacent to the property that would, of course, remain agricultural, but it principally is an area of single-family development. There's the existing street network. Again, I mentioned the future extension of Sunset Lane. 163rd Street would be extended over to Madison. We have the major collector street of Madison, so we have a good street network servicing the site. Water, sanitary, sewer service is already to the property. So the property is prime for residential development, and its proximity to the school and proximity to Hawkridge Park makes it ideal for families to live upon the property. So based upon all of that, staff is recommending that the commission accept the findings of fact that we propose and forward this case for rezoning to R1P to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. I've opened the public hearing already. Before I invite anyone from the public to come forward and speak, I will ask if you want to speak on this case. We'll give you an opportunity to come up to the podium. Please give us your name and address for the record. And we would ask that you limit your comments to, let's say, no more than 5 minutes. And if you're supporting a position that's already been stated rather than restating it, please just note that you're in agreement with the previous speaker. Thank you. So at this point, I will ask, is anyone from the public wanting to speak on case 20010, Parkside rezoning agricultural to R1P? If so, please come forward to the podium.
Sarah Locke, 404 South Sunset Lane. It's green. Oh. Good evening. Thank you all for your time tonight. Raymore is a great place to call home. We love that it's growing, the growing neighborhoods, and welcoming new neighbors. Please all remember that as the town grows, we should be very responsible about growing our town, respectful, and do it respectfully, just not recklessly. We need to ask the important questions and keep emotions of our beloved town at bay. With the rezoning or the development of this project, put strain on any of our current infrastructures, the cost that will cost Raymore anything unnecessary as far as our waters, our schools, our public works, our law enforcement, sanitary, storm. If so, are there ways to address it and appease all involved, including Raymore? With that being said, I do have a couple questions regarding the rezoning. Has there been any studies done for the stormwater that is going to increase for Creekmore and Creekmore's detention? So our stormwater structures, with this rezoning, you're going to increase everything and the potential of flooding additional infrastructures. Where is the tributary going to be for this new development or rezoned area? He spoke that he was in speakings with the Corps of Engineers and surpassed that. I would like to know how that study with the Corps of Engineers is going. Also, there is a neighbor to the south that is agricultural and residential do not mix very well as far as with no buffers, no anything. Is there going to be an easement, a trail, something separating that? Was this originally planned in the Raymore's adapted growth management plan in order to have this rezoned from agricultural to residential? With this rezoning, it adds population to our town, and instead of focusing on increasing the population, have we ever considered growing our businesses so we can financially support these population growths? Right now, currently, we are forcing people to go out of Raymore for businesses. Instead of actually increasing our business aspect, we're overpopulating our city. Again, to sustain growth and thrive and versus strive, we need to do this responsibly, not hastily and recklessly. Why the rush to move forward with rezoning? At this time, let's grow Raymore at Raymore's pace and what Raymore can financially support. Currently, right now, we cannot support them with our businesses. Again, thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you, Ms. Locke. Would anyone else like to speak on case 20010? If so, please come forward to the podium.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kenneth Filer. My address is 806 North Madison. I'm the owner of Filer Family Farm. Basically, the little section right there, the southeast corner. We moved here 3 years ago, and the third day we were here, Fred approached me wanting to buy our farm. And I understand it's in a prime location. But we said no. There was no way. The school district was great, the low crime rate, there's no sex offenders nearby us. It was a great commute for my wife. And then we've called Raymore our home for the last 3 years, and we're very pleased that we did that. I think our business as a farm has been doing really well. We've been raising pigs and chickens and rabbits, having a lot of great success with it. But what I'm concerned with is looking at the previous plat that I received, there's going to be 7 homes that are going to border right along our fence line. And right now, if you drive by our farm, we have hogs. They're only 6-month-old hogs. There's 8 of them. And they're going to be right along that fence line. And then we got chickens that run all over the place. We have rabbits that are all over the place. planting trees, planting vegetables, you name it. I mean, it's a working farm. And we're going to have noises and we're going to have smells that are going to be associated with that. Now, I tried my best at mitigating any of the sounds and any of the noises. 3 weeks ago, we butchered 15 roosters just to kind of bring the noise level down. And we haven't had a complaint from anybody from Madison Creek because most of the operations on that north side of our farm, not against Madison Creek. So my biggest concern is, am I going to get complaints from our new neighbors for the noise and for the smell without having a buffer there? Other thing is, as far as I know, Sarah mentioned, with the rain, every time we get a hard rain, North Madison floods and closes down. Right now, with that road construction going on, I was hoping that that drainage area would be taken care of or fixed. Is there any way we can get that drainage on the east side of North Madison so that way it captures all that rainwater coming from the east, moving down to North Madison? That way it goes into Lumpkins Fork Creek. Like I said, I mean, progress is going to happen whether we like it or not. I know that. My biggest thing is, like, how big does Raymore expect to grow? I mean, are we going to try and use up every single green space that we have for subdivisions? And people keep telling me all the time, whether it's at the farmer's market or when they come to our farm, they like the small town feel of Raymore. But if we keep growing, we're not going to have that small town feel. And I love Raymore. I really do. And I'd like to keep that small town feel. So, gentlemen, ladies, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Filer. Would anyone else from the public like to speak on case 20010, Parkside rezoning?
Hello, I'm Bradley Quest. I live at 1116 North Madison Street. I own the property just north of where the proposed dog park is going to be, the north and south vertical 10 acres there. So I, like Mr. Filer, I grew up in Raymore, been here a long time, love the feel. Also understand that growth is always inevitable. My questions are probably as much for the city as they are the developer. I expressed some of these during the Good Neighbor meetings, in that what is the planned development and timeline for the extension of 163rd Street, and is there any plan for improving Madison Street beyond Gore, where, or excuse me, I think it's down where Mr. Filer's farm is. So currently, as you all know, Madison Street improvement several years ago stopped at about the junction of Mr. Filer's farm, and it's currently really nothing's been done with that. So as this subdivision progresses through the years, and then looking at the plat, I know it's stated that it doesn't even really get a little over halfway across the farm, and it's going to take 11 years if that plan holds on the development. But we all know once it's zoned, it will be developed all the way to Madison. So what's the time frame for the plan of widening Madison, making storm sewers there? Because that is really going to affect me to the north of that. And then what is the city's plan for the development of these parks? And I have to be honest with you, from a park standpoint, I like green space, and I think parks are always a good thing, but also understand the monetary constraints that we have for road and park development, as evidenced with the bond that was just passed. Bond issues are great because you get other people to pay for your infrastructure, but it's also left with the city to maintain that through the years and keep it up. And I think we all know how much money it takes to keep up our streets and our parks are now. So I'd kind of like to know what the plans are from the development of 163rd, North Madison, and the dog parks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public like to speak on case 20010 Parkside rezoning? And seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And I think I'll first ask staff, Mr. Cataret, Mr. Krass, if either of you would care to address any of the questions that have come up in the public hearing. Otherwise, we'll go to discussion by the commission. Mr. Krass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question regarding stormwater. That will be worked out as part of, assuming that this area gets rezoned. Those type of details are worked out as part of the preliminary plat. They are not addressed at the rezoning level. They will be required as part of the preliminary plat to comply with all of the city Raymore codes regarding stormwater runoff, water quality, any other impacts from the development. So that gets addressed at the preliminary plat stage. With regards to the timing of 163rd Street, that is really dependent on development. As development moves to the east, as Creekmore continues to develop, they are responsible for construction of 163rd Street. So that is really going to be market driven by Cooper Communities. There is a segment of 163rd Street that is included with the general obligation bond extension of Sunset Lane. So we will be connecting 163rd Street from its present terminus to Sunset Lane to complete that roadway network there. Long term, yes, there are improvements scheduled for Madison Street. At the present time, they are not part of our capital improvement plan. However, when 163rd Street is extended to Madison Street, we would look at improvements to the intersection there, such as turn lanes. But there are significant right-of-way constraints moving north along Madison Street. Currently, the way that road was originally dedicated was by petition to the county. Literally, the only right-of-way that exists along Madison Street north of Madison Creek is the pavement. So there is only 22 feet of right-of-way there. Over time, KCP&L has come in and put in significant transmission mains. So there are a lot of constraints involved with widening that road. And quite frankly, a two-lane road can handle the traffic from the development and the development of the area. There's a number of two-lane roads in the area. 58 Highway, J Highway, 291 are two-lane roads, and they have adequate capacity to move traffic unimpeded. I believe that addresses the questions that were related to the public works infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Krass. Mr. Cataret, anything you'd like to add at this time?
A couple of items. One of the questions dealt with, what did the overall plan for the city show for this particular area? And as I identified in the staff report, our growth management plan has a future land use plan that has shown the subject property as being an area for what's called low-density residential development, which is single-family residential development. That's been in place since 1995. So really with the history long before even Creekmore developed, this particular area heading north of Madison Creek has been planned for single-family development. Mr. Filer's comments, well taken as far as, when we look at development occurring, I mean, the subject property, Mr. Filer's property, were agricultural when Madison Creek came in. Those folks buy up to agricultural property. There's certain things you have to expect. But we, in my office, not only do we deal with the planning and zoning matters, we deal with the code enforcement matters. So we do get the calls when there are complaints. Certainly a lot less sympathetic when somebody moves in next to an agricultural farm property. There are rights on both sides, and we certainly acknowledge those. And it was going to be the same scenario when folks, if this development moves forward, goes on what would be the north side of Mr. Filer's property. When we get to the preliminary plan, we'll look a little closer about, what can be done for separation between the two properties. But when you have agricultural land being surrounded by, smaller lots, single-family development, potential for conflicts are certainly there, but city always acknowledges who was there first. The agricultural properties, have been there. The overall growth of the city, I mean, when you look at the strategic plan for the city wants to grow. The city fathers want the city to grow. And absolutely, we want to see commercial development. We want to see jobs produced within our communities, so people can work within our community. A lot of the discussions that we have, we don't have some of the advantages that Belton has regarding commercial visibility off the interstate, which is why you're seeing some focus on Belton getting probably more commercial development currently than what Raymore is seeing. Households, rooftops has been critical for Raymore in attracting businesses. We're able to show that we're a growing community, which helps attract businesses because they see the potential for new customers coming into the area. City's absolutely focused on getting commercial development in our city, but we are told and we believe rooftops helps us get there. We finally surpassed the 20,000 threshold, which is kind of a baseline minimum for a lot of your corporate developers to look at Raymore. And they're seeing a lot of potential, and that's why you see some of the growth that we're fortunately getting commercially. The parkland dedication discussion, it was part of the Good Neighbor meeting. Park Board has actually looked at the project. The land area to the north of what would be 163rd extended is what would be dedicated to the city for parkland. So, but if the project moves forward, if that land is dedicated to the city, any plans for development of the parkland goes through a similar process of public notification, Good Neighbor discussions with the neighbors. So there will be some ability for the neighbors to know what is being proposed on the city land if that moves forward. I believe that other than the infrastructure questions Mr. Krasse answered, I think that was the list of questions I had.
Thank you, Mr. Ketterat. And I would remind Commission, I'm actually quoting from point 13 on page 7. This is a request to rezone from agricultural to R1P. There is no preliminary plan to review or consider at this time. So the focus is on discussion of the most appropriate land use for the property. And Mr. Zerr, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
Thank you, Chairman. No, the only aspects that legal would add to it would be from the perspective of approval. Again, or the Commission's determination with regard to this, refer back to your findings of fact, and from a legal standpoint, the highest and best use of the property is what would be looked at from legal side.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Zerr. All right, so the floor is open for discussion by the Commission.
I had a quick one.
Yeah, Commissioner Kia? Oh, sorry.
I had just a real quick one.
Commissioner Bowie.
I do appreciate the detailed breakdown of the difference between R1 and R1P. Just I guess maybe a two-part question. Can you provide like just a real quick example of a R1 versus a R1P throughout the city that's already established?
Mr. Ketterat?
Yeah, Mr. Ketterat.
Yes, sir. Some of our R1 developments, for example, Madison Creek to the south is a pure R1, 8,400 square foot lots, 70-foot lot widths, 10-foot side yards. That's standard. Some of our R1Ps over the years, Eagle Glen subdivision is an R1P. It is the only adjustment there was side yard setbacks, which was very common for a lot of our R1Ps, just to reduce that 10-foot down to typically 7-foot. But Brookside is another R1P development that has some modifications to it. Has not been used recently, partly because initially with those older developments, Brookside, Eagle Glen, we didn't have that menu of amenities. They came in and asked for P, it was granted. There really wasn't anything in return for getting that flexibility. Several years ago, we created that menu of amenities that I've included in the staff report, things that the developer has to do to get a planned district. I don't know that we've seen that request come forward until now. And so what we've done is when the applications look to shift from PUD to R1P, we shared the amenities with the developer. The developer has to agree to do those and show those when he comes forward with a preliminary plan. That's when we lock all that in. But the idea, again, is to try to, so the community gets something in return for having that flexibility for internal deviations to the standards.
Okay, and that menu of things hasn't been altered or amended, because it says on here all, they have to have all, they have to include all those things there.
Yeah, they have to work through the menu, and a couple of instances, they're able to select which options they'll use.
Okay.
But they have to meet all those options.
Thanks a lot.
Yep, thank you. Commissioner Urquilla.
So I understand that, you mentioned that the proposed use of this area for 25 years has been light residential. So I guess my kind of question is, why then would we allow an area to remain agricultural if the plan was to turn it into light residential in the future?
We typically, when we have undeveloped land, a lot of it is put into the agricultural zoning district, kind of as a holding zoning classification. Unusual for the city to come forward and try to reclassify land simply to match our growth management plan. We typically do not do that. We have done city-initiated rezonings in those instances where we had use of property that didn't match. For example, was the properties on the east side of North Madison Street were all zoned agricultural. Well, we created this rural estate zoning district, which was for single-family homes on larger acreage. The city initiated rezoning for those agricultural properties to RE because it was a better fit for the residents, a better match of the use of the land and the zoning. If we had property being utilized for agricultural purposes, we tended to leave that as agricultural. And that's what happened on the west side of Madison Street. So.
I would dovetail onto that as well to simply indicate that most of the time a property owner is not going to be very happy with a city coming in order to change the zoning to a residential designation, which may well also bring with it higher tax dollars.
I understand that piece, but my point is at a time of sale, if you know that the land is designated for something, this is just me kind of trying to understand why, I understood the previous owner, if it was agriculture, you leave it agricultural for those reasons. But knowing that the plan is, we want to turn this into residential, kind of like the east side of Madison, then when you know that the owner is ready to vacate the area, then at that point, why not go ahead and look at the rezoning so as not to create what it looks like we're creating, which is a nice little agricultural plot in the middle of residential.
Yeah, again, all the land around this 155 acres was agricultural. Creekmore came in and rezoned it to PUD. This land was still is today, being utilized for agricultural purposes. The developer comes in and typically is looking to purchase it for residential purposes. They'll put a contract for sale contingent on getting the zoning they need to develop it. If they can't get the zoning, contract goes away and the landowner continues their legal use of farming the property.
Yeah, and I understand and get all that. I just, again, was curious why you would have why we would have sold the new piece. My issue isn't what you just said. I completely agree with everything you just said. It's just that when you know that the future use, or that this was, that this is on the menu, and you have a buyer coming in as recently as 3 years ago, knowing that the developments are all around it, and keeping it agricultural, why, if the city growth plan is residential, why we would allow it to remain agricultural at that point is kind of my question at the time of sale.
Other questions, comments from the commission? Commissioner Ackland?
Maybe I missed your answer, but one of the residents was asking a question about the smell and the complaints that he may get. Did you address that?
I think the concern would be on the potential. Has more residents, more neighbors moving in. He identified that. He hasn't gotten the complaints from the single-family homes to the south, which is in the Madison Creek subdivision, nor have the city. We haven't received complaints on the use of that property for agricultural purposes. I think he was just concerned of now he's going to have them on the north side, which is closer to where he keeps the animals, and is just fearful of future complaints that could come from residents, you know, near his property.
Is there an issue?
Again, I don't believe there is. I mean, we can't control, we don't know what's going to happen, you know, what position those residents will take. Position of the city will be, that's an agricultural property. Livestock existed on that property before this land was developed, before your home, the home was built. We won't be as sympathetic to the person calling unless it truly is a legitimate nuisance complaint, and we have, and the landowner, the farmer, isn't operating, you know, properly, isn't containing the smells as he should, et cetera. But again, it's known to be agricultural, and that's how we'll be presented to people, you know, when they move in. They'll see it, they'll know it's there. So it's kind of, you have to accept that as a neighbor when you move in.
It will remain a legal use. It will remain a legal use as an agricultural property. And so therefore, we would impose all the same requirements for an agricultural property, regardless of what the neighboring property owners are.
Commissioner Wiggins.
Thank you. Although I know this is, like you said, this is just about the zoning, you continue to reference the menu of residential amenities, and earlier you talked about, you know, lot sizes potentially being smaller in some areas, and that would be, you know, taking place of the regulations of the lot size would be replaced with amenities. Does that mean additional amenities than what are set forth here, where we have groups 1, 2, and 3 of required residential amenities, so they have to have one of each of those 3? Then are we talking an additional second from some of these categories, or third from some of these categories? Because if that's the trade-off, hey, you can not follow the regulations, but you got to do something else. I mean, we're talking about more than the existing 3, right? And I realize this doesn't have to do with the zoning. I know Jonathan's giving me a little look, but that matters to me because the zoning is what's going to have something to do with, you know, the actual use of the property. And I don't know, to me I realize it's, you know, whatever, cart before the horse or whatever, but we've also all seen the initial preliminary plats, and a lot of issues I'm sure probably have come up from that. So it's kind of hard to forget those to a certain degree too.
A valid question, because we are talking zoning. They are asking for the planned overlay district, and part of that requirement is specifically back to this menu of amenities. So as you go through that, for example, with the housing diversity, they have to meet, there's 3 categories there, they have to meet all 3 categories. When you get down to residential amenities, they have to select one amenity from each one of those groups. So you're going to get multiple different amenities coming in, but there's a little bit of flexibility from the developer standpoint about how they provide that. It has to be proved up when they actually come forward with that preliminary plan.
Okay, I guess I was confused then, because it sounded like you said additional amenities were going to be required because they were no longer following R1P requires they do the 3. And the concession by changing the regulations of the lot size was to add additional amenities.
Yeah. The R1 does not require the amenities. The additional amenities are because of the planned district. So I didn't word it properly when I first stated.
It sounded like you were saying they were going to have to do more than one in certain groups because of a concession.
As long as they follow this menu, then they would meet the requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fizer.
If we do approve this rezoning, the preliminary plat will come back to us?
Yes, it will. So we have to go through the process of another good neighbor meeting, because this truly is a separate application for preliminary plan, and then it would come back in front of the commission as a public hearing and on to city council. Yes.
Okay, because I just like the idea of it, you know, working with the neighbors and addressing their concerns. So thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Wiggins.
Okay, so for clarification then, if we move forward with the rezoning, but then the preliminary plat comes back and there are a variety of issues or concerns that maybe would present, some sort of problem, or somebody just says, whatever, does the rezoning continue to move forward or if, I'm thinking if it's rezoned from ag to R1P, and then let's hypothetically say the developer decides, to come forward with a preliminary plat, we have a bunch of changes and things we want done, and they just say, honestly, it's not worth it anymore, we don't want to go forward with it. Are we already changed to R1P, or do we revert back to ag because the intent and purpose is no longer there, and then, it potentially is an issue for future landowners if somebody wanted to buy that land, and then they have to go through the rezoning process to make it ag again if they wanted it to be ag.
Mr. Zur, would you like to address that?
The answer would be the applicant could always withdraw their application anytime prior to final city council approval for the rezoning application. I would anticipate that this rezoning application will be completed or will have a final determination made before a proposed plan would be submitted to the city for review and its consideration. If they decided that plan was not something they were willing to proceed forward, the zoning still remains the same on the property.
The new
R1P.
The new zone. Okay.
The new zoning, that's correct.
So once we approve this as R1P tonight, it's R1P moving forward unless someone comes forward and requests to
But you're
rezone
making a
it.
recommendation to the city council with regard to the
right, sorry,
proposed
yeah.
rezoning. The city council still has to act in order to alter the zoning.
Thank you. But yeah,
And with regard to the alterations, you raised the question of why didn't we come in order to change the zoning at that particular time. From a city's perspective, we don't know necessarily when property transfers in hand or transfers and conveys over. It's all one single owner until someone presents to us hey, we've got a contract on this, or we've recently purchased this, and here's our proposed application.
excellent. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Zur. Other questions, comments from the commission? Any brave souls want to make a motion on the case?
Sure, I'll make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the staff proposed findings of fact and forward case number 20010, the rezoning of 155 plus acres from A Agricultural District to R1P Single Family Residential Plan District to City Council with recommendation of approval.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Bowie to accept staff proposed findings of fact and forward case 20010, rezoning of 155 plus or minus acres from A Agricultural District to R1P Single Family Residential Plan District, forwarding to City Council with a recommendation of approval. Mr. Zur, that sound close enough? I believe so. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. And we have 8 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. So this will move on to City Council. All right. Our next case this evening under new business is case 20018, Scooters Coffee Site Plan. And let's see, this case does not require a public hearing and is the applicant.
I think Jim is getting him.
Oh, okay.
Just a second.
I was going to say, I don't see anyone left. Thank you. Okay, we ready to get going? All right, so I've called case 20018, Scooters Coffee Site Plan, and ask if the applicant would like to come forward to the podium and present your case.
Good evening. My name's Dan Forsland. I'm with Scooters Coffee, the corporate office, and I'm here representing Jack Burdick, the local franchisee owner of this location. We are proposing a 556 square foot coffee drive-through establishment at the 1800 block of Foxwood Drive. So we are proposing a site plan approval. Personally, I think the site's worked out very well. We have roughly an 8 to 9 car stack, plenty of parking for our employees, and plenty of green space around our building. So that's just a brief statement on our project, and we're here to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Catterat or Ms. Jardot, would you please give us a staff report?
The applicant is Jack Burdick, and he is requesting site plan approval for Scooters Coffee. The existing surrounding uses are also commercial. To the east is a planned unit development, so residential, and then to the south across from Foxwood Drive is also some residential directly south, but then also commercial to the west. The total area is 9.51 acres. However, the site plan is just for the area marked in red, a red outline, sorry. The property is to be subdivided in the future, but the total lot right now is 9.51 acres. The applicant is seeking site plan approval for a proposed 566 square foot, one-story building for Scooters Coffee. The building will have drive-through access only. They're providing 4 parking spots, including 1 for handicap accessibility for employees only. The engineering department has reviewed the application and determined that it complies with the applicable requirements of city code. A couple things to note are the special use conditions, which include that the sale of alcoholic beverages will be permissible only as a minor adjunct and incidental use to the primary use. Outdoor patio dining areas are allowed, provided that the patio is at least 100 feet from any residentially zoned property. 100 feet is approximately, if you see where on the aerial where the current drive kind of ends and makes that little bit of a curve, 100 feet is on the other side of that. So it's very limited, any outdoor patio. From any residentially zoned property. Also, a type A landscape screen is required along the eastern property line. The landscape plan proposes a type A screen to be installed along the entire eastern property line, which will be of a vinyl fence, and they will be preserving the existing trees currently in place. If for some reason existing vegetation is removed to the point that a type A screen is no longer provided, the new landscaping must be installed to establish a type A screen prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. There is also a minimum 6-foot landscaped area provided along all street frontages. That includes the area to on the western side as well. The required interior parking lot area, landscaping, and perimeter parking lot landscaping include a tree and have been provided for in the site plan. For pedestrian access, due to it being only a drive-through, a sidewalk from 58 Highway up to the building is not necessary. There's also substantial grade changes that don't necessarily allow for it safely. In regards to signage, while the sign package is not part of this plan, I think it's important to go over that so that there are not any misunderstandings later. So a monument sign is proposed in the southwest corner of the lot, and 2 directional signs are proposed, both of which are on-site only. There are 3 building signs that are being proposed, and a menu board is also proposed on-site. For stormwater management, the stormwater runoff is collected on-site and then directed to a drain in a stormwater pipe that crosses through the property. In terms of site lighting, the parking lot area is limited to 4 parking spots, and so no parking lights are being proposed. There is some lighting on the actual building, but there's no parking lot lighting per se. For the trash and recycling enclosure, UDC section 430.110 states that the trash and recycling enclosure to be permanently screened from view, and all screens must match in primary color and material of the structure served. The main building is being proposed as hardy plank lap siding and hardy reveal panel system. The applicant will need to address and present information for the city to decide if the CMU block painted to match the color of the building is acceptable as a trash enclosure. Another thing to note is the gas line easement that crosses through the property on the eastern side. No portion of the building extends into the easement area, and the site plan has been approved by Spire, whose pipeline it is. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission determine the acceptability of the trash enclosure materials, and then upon determination, staff recommends the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the staff proposed findings of fact and approve case number 20018, Scooter's Coffee site plan, subject to the following conditions which are outlined below. There are 12 total conditions. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Jardin. All right. Discussion is open for the commission. Questions or comments? Commissioner Wiggins.
Mr. Ardo, you probably were looking at me when I had a funny face regarding lights. I understand since it's an employee and it's only 4, there's no parking lot light requirements, but yet I guess I'm confused or maybe even concerned for an employee's safety that there wouldn't be any sort of illumination. You know, let's say, I don't know what time normal Scooters closes. Let's say it's 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. You know, you're probably talking 1, maybe 2, probably teenage kids that are probably working the, you know, so you've got the back of Foxwood Springs, dark homes, probably at night. You've got a tree row. You're behind the building. The building is shielding view off of 58 where people would potentially see. So it's unfortunately a pretty prime place for somebody to want to grab someone's purse at night or whatever if there's no illumination in the parking lot area. You know, maybe they have plans for cameras or maybe there's a building light, but is there not any concern as far as having a single light of some sort for employee safety back there?
I wouldn't say there's no concern. I do think that that's something that Scooters needs to address, and not myself.
Thank you.
So no, we certainly agree. We don't want to put our employees in an area that's not lit well or dangerous. We have found with our 8 exterior sconces, and we are also wrapping our building along the parapet wall with an LED light band, illuminating our property at night. We have found that to be sufficient in the past, but again, we do take the safety very seriously, and we are probably going to run a conduit for future use if we find during construction that the candle lights is not adequate. So although I'm not saying we're going to install one at this time, it is in our thoughts to make sure it's safe out there.
That was Mr. Wiggins haranguing you, not me, so I didn't know.
I thought I come over there.
No, over here.
Is that the speaker?
We don't even have the masks on.
I'm a 40-year veteran of the police force, but I'm not as big a cynic as he is.
It must have been the echoing in the chambers.
Hey, I like to think forward. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I got a quick question.
Right. We have a bad habit of running you back and forth.
Yeah.
There's no rush to anyone else to get to the podium if you want to stay a minute. Commissioner Bowie.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Large lot, or what, 9.5, almost 10 acres, really tiny building. What about getting in and out? Can we be a little more detailed about how we're getting in and out? Traffic, along that road there can be busy. Do you want to just kind of real quickly talk about some of the entrances and exits of the site, please?
So currently, the only access to the site is west of Belfonte, I believe it's now a different name, on the car wash. There, and maybe staff could speak to this better than I can, but there is a new access drive being proposed east of Belfonte that will be our primary means of access. There is no, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a median, so no left turns into our property. It would purely be a right in, right out access.
Has that been thoroughly vetted? You can speak to that a little bit.
So, like you said, Belfonte's sort of /go car wash, it had paused for a little bit, but they are continuing to make that access lane, which then gets them back to, I believe it's Westgate Drive. It's just a rear access, sorry, I guess it has no name, because it's a private drive. And so all access will come from the rear of their building on that northern portion. So no backup or stacking would occur on Foxwood. Does that address your concern?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just always a concern when we bring in new businesses right there. It's always super busy, and so the potential for accidents is pretty high in that area. So that answered though. Thank you.
I got a quick question.
Commissioner Ackland.
I understand there is a Scooters in Raytown, Missouri here, and if I haven't seen it, but if I was to go out there, would it be, give me a good idea what it may look like? Are they built kind of similar?
I'm not sure of the specific location in Raytown. I know that this is our latest model with our primary colors, so I'm not sure if Raytown was an older model for the exterior finishes. But I can certainly share with you renderings of what we're proposing right now, if you haven't already. Okay.
Excuse me, there is a new store in Lee Summit as well.
Okay, yeah, pardon, we can't hear you without the
There's actually a
microphone.
new store in Lee Summit right next to Commerce Bank over there on 150. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a new model there in Lee Summit, which would be closer for you than, and besides that Raytown store, you have to have a GPS to get in and out of.
And just for the record, are you Mr. Burdick?
I am, I'm the
Okay.
franchise owner.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we had that straight.
Certainly stay up here if you want to share the podium.
So you're doing a fine job.
While the owner's up there, while you're up there, I've got
Yeah.
a quick question.
Okay.
How many other scooter franchises do you own? What number is this? Will this be for you?
Number one,
Okay.
in my hometown, I'm a Raymore resident.
And do you plan on owning more?
We are planning a second store immediately, but we have plans maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, sorry, if you could get on the mic.
We're planning for a second store within the next year, and then ultimately 3 to 5 stores throughout the area.
Okay.
But this is our first.
Okay. And that was Commissioner Urquia's question. Yeah, Commissioner Pfizer.
I don't know if this was covered or not, but what is the material for the trash enclosures?
Proposed.
The trash enclosure material is CMU block painted to match the primary color of our building. The trash enclosure we're proposing is comprised of CMU block painted to match the color of our building with steel gates. It was our opinion that since CMU block is a masonry product, along with the James Hardy paneling, which is a fiber cement product, we would consider them both to be cementitious and to meet the interpretation of the code for the staff's review.
And if you wouldn't mind, what's the downside of using hardy board on the trash enclosure?
I mean, we do feel hardy board is durable. Obviously, we would not propose it on our building if we did not feel it was durable. The only downside we found was possibly failure of the connection between screening because the core of the enclosure would still be built from CMU block. Our one concern would be failure of that connection point.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Other questions from the commission? Commissioner Arkia.
My question's for city staff. I don't know, but before I ask, are there any other questions
Well,
for them? Because I don't want to make
We'll
them
let the applicant sit down and then
Yeah, that's
we'll
what I was
see
getting
how
at,
that
unless
works.
there's other questions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So piggybacking on his answer to the trash enclosures, what is the city's concerns or feelings on the proposed trash enclosure?
The city staff, the UDC states that it needs to match in material and color of the main structure. So.
And so we're veering from the same material. We're going to get the same color, but they're veering from the material. Is that why you're asking us to consider that?
Correct. It
Okay.
is not the same material as the main structure.
Okay.
And Mr. Zur, if you would add something to that, if the commission was to approve this site plan this evening with trash enclosure as proposed, is that within our authority to concur that the materials are equivalent?
Of equal similarity and sufficient for purposes of being able to approve the application. Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't require a variance or anything further. Thank you.
Does it require a motion to that variance at all? Like, do we have to do like a motion for the variance and then a motion for?
No, I
So
think,
I was under the question from the chair, as I understood it, was if we are to approve it this evening as provided, would that require
Right.
a variance of the proposed language? And the answer is no, it would not. If you were not in a position to approve it based upon the materials, that's a question that would need to be presented to the applicant at this particular point. Be up to their determination as to whether or not to proceed forward with it, or if they would be willing to accept it with alternative material included.
and, right, you interpreted my question the way I intended it. Thank you. Commissioner Wiggins.
So to add on to that, and maybe the applicant might need to come back up. So I'm looking at a photo from a couple of months ago taken of the one, it's off 150 here in Google Images. So you have the gray hardy board, the wood look siding, and then the kind of tan colored stucco. So is the trash enclosure that's proposed to match the gray hardy board versus the tan stucco? Is what I just want, from a color perspective, I guess that's what I'm just trying to confirm. And so then the CMUs would be like a glazed finished exterior, or, I mean, if you're going to paint them, we're not talking about cinder block that's painted, are we? Or we're talking about higher end CMUs that you would use in an educational building or something of architectural standard versus, sorry, I used to have a client that sold this stuff. So versus, I mean, because a cinder block is a CMU as well, but you can paint cinder block gray, but it's still cinder block, or you can use really nice higher end CMUs. It's kind of a generic term for about 700 different block varieties. So
I didn't realize. Okay.
sorry, I had a, like I said, I had a client that used to sell it. So
I mean, we are proposing a smooth face CMU block painted to match our building. The CMU, I'm sure there's a technical name out there, and I could look that up here, but it is smooth faced, if that helps answer your question.
Yes.
The enclosure itself is painted a skyline steel beige color to match the James Hardy reveal panel of our building. On the wood, the Hardy plank area, it currently is an inkwell darker color, almost black.
yeah.
We're proposing to paint our steel gates that inkwell color, with the bollards protecting the gates to be a positive red, matching the red accents of our building. So again, it was our interpretation that although the materials did not match, the class of materials matched, and that is what we are asking. I don't want to speak for the owner, but if that is not acceptable to staff, we would ask for a conditional approval, changing the enclosure back to reveal panels.
Thank you.
Okay, while you're there, sorry. Was that it?
Yeah.
Was there anything else?
No,
I appreciate
the
it.
floor is yours, Commissioner Bowie.
Okay, so buffer stays to the east, correct? That separates from the houses, correct?
Correct.
Or the residential. Access by pedestrians, this was noted in the staff proposed findings of fact, I think it was E. Access by pedestrians. Walk up, I mean, you can't sit there in the building because it's not open for that, just drive through. Access through sidewalks or anything like that, has that been looked at or talked about at all?
We are not proposing any walk-up access for pedestrians at this location. They would not be able to park unless an employee stall was empty. And of course, behind our parking stalls, there is a sidewalk to the rear of our building. But there is no patio, there is no crosswalk. We felt there was a safety concern with pedestrians crossing a drive-through lane.
Okay. And you guys won't, I'm looking at special use conditions, there's no alcohol at your...
No alcohol, no.
Gotcha, okay.
Yep.
Irish coffee? Sorry, bad idea. Okay, so I think a lot of my questions have been discussed already. Trash enclosures, lighting, employee parking. Just to clarify, so the signage is not a part of this site plan. Sign plan is separate, but am I correct that what's been shown, what the applicant is proposing would be in conformance with our maximum number of signs?
Correct. What's being shown would meet it, but it is not part of the application.
Right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure the applicant didn't get a rude surprise later. Okay, so I actually have only one more question, and this is for Mr. Crass. I noted in the plans, I believe in multiple places, there are various caution notes about head pressure. Must be reported to city, and I'm thinking that head pressure concerns the water supply, and I'm just wondering, simply because it's noted so many times, is there any real concern about this?
The latest we got from the architect is yes, there is significant head loss, and they are looking at some kind of a pressure pump and holding tank for the building, and that's going to be addressed as part of the building permit.
Okay, so it will be covered.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Crass. All right. Any other questions from the commission? Comments?
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Arquette?
I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Oh, okay.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept the staff proposed finding of fact and approve case number 20018, Scooters Coffee Site Plan, subject to the 12 outlined conditions. And do we need to forward it to? Okay. So yeah, that's it.
All right.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Arquette, second by Commissioner Wiggins to accept staff proposed findings of fact on case 20018, Scooters Coffee Site Plan, and approve the site plan subject to the following 12 conditions as noted. Mr. Zur, I do just have one question about this motion. So staff in their recommendation very specifically said, recommend Planning and Zoning Commission determine acceptability of the trash enclosure materials. With the motion by Commissioner Arquette and the previous discussion that what's shown on the site plan is something that the commission can agree to. Is that motion sufficient, do you think, to address staff's concern about the trash enclosure?
The motions, as I understood it, was to approve the application
Right.
as submitted, subject to the 12 conditions provided, which means as submitted, it will be approved with the current trash enclosure as provided, with the alteration of materials that has been presented as part of the original application.
Right, good, thank you. Just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. All right, any further discussion on the motion then? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wow. I have 8 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. That takes us up to City Council report. Mr. Zur.
Thank you, Chairman. Since your last since your last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on September 1st, there has been one City Council meeting last night with regard to items of interest for the Planning and Zoning Commission. I would note 2 items in particular, one under unfinished business for a second reading, and that would be the replat of the Prairie View of the Good Ranch. This was a replat of the Prairie View of the Good Ranch in order to modify and remove the easement running through the middle of the subdivision. I'm sorry, to modify the easement crossing through the subdivision. You all originally had the opportunity to review this at your August 18th, 2020 meeting and approved it unanimously. It was approved unanimously by the City Council on first reading on August 24th and approved for the second reading and finally read on last night. The second item on the agenda of interest to the Planning and Zoning Commission was under new business for a first reading, and that was the Oak Ridge Farms rezoning, the R1 to PUD. City Council held a public hearing on that matter and allowed for input. At the conclusion, the City Council approved the first reading of that application unanimously, and you all would recall that this was approved and considered it by the Planning and Zoning Commission on August 4th and approved unanimously by the P&Z at that time. I'm happy to provide any additional input, obviously from Mr. Crass, Mr. Cataret, and Mayor Turnbow, but I think that would conclude City Council report.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Zur. Anything to add? All right, that takes us on to staff report. Mr. Cataret, Ms. Jardot.
Thank you, sir. Just go over upcoming calendar for the commission. We will have a meeting of the commission on October 6th. We have one case on your agenda. It is a public hearing. It's for rezoning of 65 acres. The property is located north of Humock Hill Road, east of Stonegate. It's currently zoned R1P. Was initially approved as Brookside South, which was an extension of the Brookside subdivision. Same developer is moving forward with this proposal. They're separating it from Brookside, calling it Saddlebrook. Their request is to rezone the property, or portion of the property, the 65 acres, to R2P, which is 2-family. Overall, it's an 80-acre property, so the north 15 acres would stay the R1 zoning. They're requesting the southern 65 acres to go to R2. We did already hold a good neighbor meeting and have notified the public of that October 6th hearing. And then we will meet on October 20th as a commission. At that meeting, we currently have the 33rd Amendment to our Unified Development Code. These would be the items that we discussed back in June when we had the 2020 annual UDC review. A couple of other items that aren't in your staff report that have been filed. We'll have a preliminary and final plat for North Cass Plaza. This is simply platting the commercial land down at the new interchange. It's the commercial land between what Van Trust is developing industrial and the North Cass Plaza roadway. They're simply platting it as 2 lots. And we'll also have the first plat of the Raymore Commerce Center, which is the Van Trust development. So they're proposing their first building. We'll be starting construction on that soon, and they are moving forward with platting the property for the first building. So all of those will be on your October 20th meeting. It's currently what we have scheduled.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. Mr. Krass, would you like to add anything about engineering?
I do not have anything this evening, sir. Thank you.
No? Okay. Thank you. Well, at this time, I'll open the floor to any comments from the public. And since our public seems to have all left this evening, we will move on to commission member comment. Let's see. Commissioner Urquia. Did I catch you off guard?
You did, but that's okay. Just, my usual thank you to the city staff for everything that you guys do, and Mr. Zur for clarifying my questions so that I understood what I needed to understand. I appreciate that, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Wiggins.
Thank you as always for city staff for all the hard work and great presentation tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Ackland.
I just want to say thank you for your thorough explanation. I learned quite a bit, so I appreciate your hard work and the patience that you have with us.
Thank you. Secretary Peterman.
Thanks to staff and good meeting.
Yeah. Vice Chair Pfizer.
I just want to say I've been following the development of the apartments that are off Fox Ridge. I drive past it every day, and it's exciting to see it all coming together, and I can actually see it from upstairs if I look over. So it's just, I think it's very exciting to see that development, and it seems to be coming along really well.
Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Bowie.
No comment. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Mayor Turnbow.
I'd like to add my thanks to staff tonight as well, and to the commission. Actually, there's a great conversation tonight. It's tough telling one portion of the room no and another portion of the room yes, and I know how hard that is. So I do appreciate all of your due diligence and paying attention to all the details and the great questions that come about. It does make life easier for the staff when they get that input for later on down the road when we're putting plans together. And I just appreciate everybody up here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Turnbow. I will add my thanks to staff and to the commissioners themselves. Always glad that we have a good turnout, and especially that we're not in danger of stopping business due to lack of a quorum. So thank you all. I know this takes some time to get out and time to review these. And as a resident of Raymore, I'll say thank you. Unless there's any further comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Commissioner Wiggins,
Second.
and second by Commissioner Ackland. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. And that's 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions.